always learn, right?
Mhm.
Always look to see for a different perspective. It will really open up your world in a way, and know that you truly are limitless.
Hello and welcome to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie, aka your business bestie. I teach female coaches, speakers, and course creators to release procrastination and perfection so that they can get more done, book more clients, and have the time freedom that all entrepreneurs crave. This is not your typical business coaching podcast. We're talking about business, life, probably some wooey magic, and probably some singing or referencing song lyrics along the way. So if you're into business building, making more money, and getting a little bit of a mindset shift along with having a good laugh, you're definitely in the right place. I've grown 3 businesses from $0 to consistent 4 and 5 figure months over the last 15 plus years. And now I'm helping you do the same thing. It didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't happen without the help of others. They say it takes a village to raise children, and I believe it takes a village to grow a business as well. So in this podcast, you'll find people who help you grow your village, cheer you on, as well as holding you accountable. I'm so excited you're here, and I can't wait for you to listen to each episode. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie, and today I have with me Kristen, who is going to tell us who you are, who you serve, and a little bit about your business.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm so excited to be here. This is such an honor and a pleasure. So I was a corporate chief financial officer. I spent about 10 years after having my own accounting and consulting business, went back into corporate for a whole bunch of reasons, and had my dream job. Everything, it checked off all the boxes, and I sat there and I was like, wow, is this what I really want to do for the next 15 years? And in the midst of that, I had already started within a coaching program and saw a lot of entrepreneurs starting out in their business, and business was new to them. And therefore, I was like, all right, let's think about this. What do I really want to do with, say, the next 15, 20 years of my career? And thought, at that leadership role, really enjoyed watching, and mentoring staff. And I'm like, add in the financials, because I was already helping, right, large CEOs understand financial data. And I'm like, what if I can bring this to entrepreneurs starting out mid-size in their business, to be able to really help them get their footing and get a really great start. So hence, I left corporate and started Alignment CFO. And it's had some little ups and downs, right, of what I want to do. There was some of that. I'm leaving corporate. I'm never going to do anything corporate, right? I did it because of the freedom, and I want to be able to set my own hours, and it's so interesting. What I found, and part of the things as navigating, was the things that really helped me in corporate keep me organized are the things that help me as an entrepreneur, right? So that's part of what I actually am in my courses teaching, actually, group program and one-on-one.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And just like, I feel like we probably have very similar client bases, right? Like, because I help people who are, either just starting or they're in their first 5 years of business, and they're like, okay, I learned this, but how do I actually implement this? How do I find this foundation that people talk about? How do I find the thing that works for me, those strategies, and I think that's so important to really empower the 75% of entrepreneurs who make less than $100,000 per year, right? Like, it's so fascinating to me, that I think a lot of people overlook that huge pool of people to be able to help, and rightfully so, right? Like, whatever, you want high ticket clients, great, that's fine. But like the lower 75%, lower, right, quote unquote, right? Those 75% that are building, that are like, oh my gosh, I just want that $100,000 mark, right? To be able to help them, lift them up is so powerful. And I think, knowing that you're kind of a financial guru, a financial wizard, right? Like, we're like, you're able to help them in a way that, like, the stuff that corporate, is based on. And that is so huge, to build on that foundation, to really know that as an entrepreneur, especially when you're starting out, you've built the foundation, and you're solid, and you don't feel like it's rocky, where you're like, okay, I think I got this in place, and now I'm just going to keep climbing this ladder to get to where I want to go. But if the bottom's not solid, right, then you're always going to be wondering, like, oh, when is the bottom? When is it going to fall out? When is this gonna tumble?
Definitely, and I found myself doing it, right? Coming out even after having a very successful business before. And I'll tell you, like, it's before online and everything, and a lot of referrals. And I came back out and I was like, well, this is going to just be easy. And then I found all the head games. Yeah. I'm like, all right, wait a second. We need to stop this. And if I'm having all these head games, and it's not to say that I have so much more experience, or I have this, or I have that, but I'm like, if I'm doing it, then everybody's doing it.
Yep.
Realizing that financial piece, being able to see and how important your vision is, right? And I talk to a lot of people starting out, right? And we're all big on our help statement. But once we've got it, I'm like, where do you want to go with your company? I want impact.
Right.
And I love that people want impact. But I was a Girl Scout leader. I ran a service unit. I had tons of impact that I didn't get paid for.
Right.
Right. So let's have impact and still earn a living. Right. Still build a business, and then add in all of the mindset. So I do a ton with money mindset and just mindset in general, because, we can get so caught up in our head.
Yes.
Right. We did this. We're afraid of doing this. Can I actually take that next step? You can. Let's just have a conversation so that you can move forward faster, so that you're not going through all that. And you're not, I love the freebies, but follow this. And it's like, how about you run your business the way you want to run your business? Yeah. I spent a lot of money on a lot of coaching programs. And then I was like, you know what? I just need to sit back and go, what do I want? And how can I do it? And find the way that I can get supported doing it my way, because there's a ton of different ways of doing it. It is not one golden path. And some people aren't going to like this, but a lot of the people that we see now that are huge, they entered the market at a different time. Yep. So what worked for them isn't necessarily going to work for you right now. And that's something that they don't say. Well, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I started my business. Right. Yes. 10 years ago, when you started an online business, it was kind of, you were all out there by yourself. Right. Well, and it was 10 years. I mean, even so I've owned businesses for 15 years, right? I owned 2 brick and mortars, and, I own a photography business. I still take photos. I owned a yoga studio for a while, and even just navigating through that and then stepping into the coaching industry 2 years ago, I was like, oh, easy peasy. I've done this. I can grow a business, no problem. And then I was very abruptly smacked in the face by, hold on, everyone's a coach, quote unquote, right? Like,
there's so many more people. You have to stand out in such a different way, which is amazing and great, but also was a big smack in the face because the people I was following had been in the industry for 5, 10 years, some of them even 20 years. And they're like, oh yeah, this worked for me. It'll work for you. And I'm like, but it's not working for me. It's not. So, like you talk about like having that like individual strategy, that's so important. And I also, I teach my clients that too. Like, yes, go ahead and listen to the big dogs, the gurus, the whoever, right? Do it by all means, but also take that information in and understand what it is that you like about it and can you implement it? Can you implement it and can you move forward with it? And I think, like you said, you focus a lot on mindset, and that is such a huge piece of an online business. It's a big piece of a brick and mortar as well. But I feel like it's tenfold, if not 100-fold for an online business because there's so much. Almost everyone in the whole world, right? 8 billion people or whatever in the world, right? There's so many people online, and it's overwhelming in like a good and a probably not so good way, right? So to have your mindset in the right space and to be able to move forward in a way that you're like, nope, I know that I am solid in what I'm doing, I trust myself, I have my own back, both like mentally, physically, and financially. Like, I feel like those are 3 huge pieces of the entrepreneur, especially digital entrepreneur puzzle, because yeah, we're all, right. We're all like working out here on Lonely Island, right? Like I'm in my home alone, like the dogs and the cats are here, but like, like amazing that we can be on Zoom together, but also like when you're an entrepreneur, you really, you are your business. So knowing that, like, all of the mind games are under control, or that at least you have the tools to, when those mind games start to pop up, because they're not going to go away, right? The higher you climb in your business, I would argue the louder the mind games become, right? Because now you're like, oh, well, I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not,
right. And so think about this. I was a chief financial officer. It is the highest position you can achieve, right, in accounting. And I still had mind games because I was like, $222 million company is the last company that I was, a CFO of. And I'm going, but it's not a Fortune 500. It's not a this. It's not.
Right.
So it doesn't, either way, you can still play, right? If you have those underlying roots, they're going to keep showing up,
right?
And I even remind my clients that we got over it at this level. Just so you know, it's not you, it's your brain, but you're going to get to do it again, and you're going to get to do it again. You just get better and faster at it.
Yep. Yeah.
And that is what helps, so therefore it works well. But yeah, you're right. You're in this, and the other thing is, I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, do you remember Facebook before you had a company?
Right.
Can you remember when you used to see the people at the PTA, the people that your kids went to school with, parents, and they're posting and everything looks all rosy? Know the backstory.
Right.
Well, guess what? Now your feed is probably full of all entrepreneurs instead of those same friends that you used to have. I always laugh when friends actually pop in my newsfeed. I'm like, oh, you still exist.
I know.
But it's still the same thing, right? It's all of that algorithm is still an algorithm. So therefore it's now showing you what you think it thinks you want, the people that you connect with. You're then seeing their feed. You can get really in your head about their feed. And you don't really know, just like you don't really know in some cases what's going on in, your kids' best friends' parents, that their house and everything looks rosy.
Right.
And then you find out it's really not as rosy as
Mm-hmm.
everything on Facebook looked.
Right. Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, and I think we all just like we see social media and as a digital business, right? That's where we go. That social media is the new town square, right? Like
Hmm.
back in the day, you used to go to church, you used to go to, the grocery store, whatever, and like that was the town square where you would like meet people and you'd be like, "Oh, hey, neighbor down the street. How are you? What's going on?" Right? Like now that is online and amplified so that yeah, it's amazing, but also it's one of those things where it's like this is so great, but also like, oh, I'm really jealous of what they're doing. They make it look so easy. How come it's
Hmm.
not that easy for me? What am I doing? Right. And then you start
Right.
getting into those head games. Um, oh yeah. I
Yeah.
totally can. Yes, I am right there with you on that. So my next question for you is, and I know you talked about it a little bit, but what is something challenging that you have overcome in your business or even your career up until this point?
Great question. Right. And it's part of how my program was born.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in freebie land, right? You start off and you're like, do this strategy, do this strategy, do this strategy. And I honestly was getting so lost in what everybody else was telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to take a break and I had to sit back and go, all right, how did I become a chief financial officer? Right? Not everybody gets to that position. And I'm like, how did I do it? What did I do? And how did I hit my goals all the time? I received extra bonuses, plus we had department goals, company goals. How did I hit them all the time? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, so let's just reverse engineer this, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I had my year goals. And I remember the first time in corporate when I had, X percentage of my salary I was going to end up making in a bonus. I got to pick the 5 things that was going to make this up. All right. So how easy is that? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And I did it. And I didn't because I just thought I would add time. I would add time and I would just, take that 50-hour week and make it 60 to 70-hour a week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that didn't work because my boss also decided, like, throughout the course, I had additional projects, I had additional this, right? I have a daughter, I have a husband, and I'm like, all right, like adding time is not the answer.
Uh-huh.
So what I teach in my program is being very intentional, right? Intentional forward action. And therefore, taking that goal, right, and breaking it down into 90 days. And then looking at every day, how intentional are you about what you're doing, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
how my department started hitting their goals because they would get lost in, oh, I'm just doing this and it'll take 5 minutes. I'm just doing this and it'll take 5 minutes.
Right.
I'm being helpful. I'm doing this, right? And they were serving the company, but they weren't at the end of the day. It was always taking away from their primary task. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes their primary task wasn't necessarily what they loved doing,
Right.
right? Obviously, I was over an accounting department, accounts receivable, payroll, right? And when my accounts receivable department didn't like collecting, that was the
Mm-hmm.
last thing they did.
Right.
So they were very busy
Uh-huh.
and we wrote off a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh
Well, you
my God.
can't stay in business writing off,
Uh-huh. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So when I set goals and we sat down and set their goals and looked at it and they had it in front of them, and I tell all my clients, like, put that sticky note in front, what your goals are so that you can
Mm-hmm.
see it and look at what you're doing, right? How do you prioritize? How do you then make sure that you're doing 80% that's going to move the needle,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help get you to where you're going to go,
Yep.
help you become who you're becoming so that you're not just, oh, I'll try this, right? And we get the FOMO and we get all of this. Oh, what if this? What if I do this?
Right. Yep.
So I had to get over that in my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started going back, putting in things that worked really well for me,
Yep.
it then helped change my entire business. It changed how I showed up. I started having more fun. I
Mm-hmm.
started having more clients. I started getting more consistent cash flow, which is always a plus,
Yes.
right? So now, with that, I take and do the intentional forward action, help with financial literacy to make sure, hey, I'm making money and I still have money left over.
Yeah.
I've worked with too many companies that all of a sudden that tax time come and they're like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yes.
And I'm like, well, and it's hard, right?
It is.
Depending on how your program's set up, you can have a little bit come in here and a little bit come in here and a little bit, right? It's different to manage than when you were used to having a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
When you had a paycheck and you got paid,
Right.
the first of the month, twice a month, every other week, you knew that set. You had a mindset of this is what I was going to do. Now
Yep.
you got a little here, a little here, a little here, depending on how your business is.
Right.
Right. And that makes it even more difficult. So being able to go through also and change that entire mindset of how do you now manage money when it's not just coming all in lump sum, right?
Mm-hmm.
What can you put in place to help keep the momentum going?
Yeah.
So, but really getting out of the trying everybody else's strategy, took a little bit longer than I would like to admit.
Yes. I can also attest to trying on other people's strategies for a little too long and just holding on hope, like, right? Like, oh, this is the week that this is gonna work. And, and then like being met with like, okay, it's another week and it has not worked for me. Okay, all right, right? And then having the thought of like, is this even going to work? Right? Like, because then you start to you try on these strategies, right? And you're like, okay, it's gonna work. I gotta give it some time to work, which is great. But also, like, at what point when you're like, I've been trying this, trying, and it still is not working.
Right.
And then you're like, oh man, this is really hard. Maybe I should give up, right? Like, and it's in that moment where you're like, okay, I could give up or I could try something different. For me, I'm always like, okay, it's not working the way I thought it was. I've tweaked a few things. It's time to make maybe a bigger shift and move in a different direction, which is ironically how this podcast got started, right? Like I was just not getting the clients that I wanted. And like, I love having conversations. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to start having conversations that I love to have. So instead of having these like collaboration calls where it was just kind of like, here's what I do and here's what I do and here's who I help, right? Those are great and wonderful. Love them. But also I'm like, I need to move the needle forward in my business and I need to stop listening to some of the gurus who are like, do this one thing and it's going to change the way. And I'm like, it's not working. I've had so many conversations and have gotten to what I feel is like so much further in my own business by stepping out and shifting a few things where I'm like, okay, how can I have more fun in my business? How can I have conversations in my business? And how can I change something that is going to just not make it feel dreadful at the end of the week when I'm like, oh, here's another week and you haven't gotten any further ahead than you did before. Right. So I think that, that is so important. And, when you talk about taking intentional forward action, that really speaks to me in a way that's like, yep, that is what we need, because I think a lot of people get stuck in the momentum, right? They have good intention and they're like, okay, here's this whole list of things that I've got to do. And wow, that's a lot. I'm really tired. I don't think I can do all of that, right? Because you look at that big list and you're like, whoo, whoo, there's a lot. There's a lot. But when you break it down, right? Like, and I'm sure you do this in your 90-day program, break it down in a way where like each day, it's not this big laundry list. It's a couple intentional things that you're like, these are the, I don't know, 3 to 5 things that I am going to do today. I get to do these things today. Really excited. And I know that this is taking me one step closer to my goal.
Right. It's about building each little thing is building on top, right? And that's what we need to remember. I'll tell people, it's like, you didn't gain 30 pounds in a day. You're not going to lose 30 pounds in a day. But when you start, to lose weight, to increase muscle, and increasing muscle, because I like to work out, is even easier, right? You start at one weight and you just keep lifting and you get better and you get better and you get better. And that's the whole point. You're building on and you're building the momentum. When I stopped getting crazy about, did anybody like my post?
Yes.
Oh my God, did I get engagement? That's when I got engagement. Now I just do it for the fun of it to see. And I get these, like, I'll get a new name and I'm like, oh, I don't even know who that is.
Right.
Like, wow, look at that. Right. And then you start having fun with it. And then everything starts to shift and it just grows on that momentum. But it's building that momentum in a positive way. Building goals, sticking with goals, and hitting goals is just like if you want to lose weight, right? It's creating new habits to get you where you're going. When I swam, right, and I was winning and I wanted to do better, it was creating new habits to get there. And then when you go habits, what do you mean? Habits is going to get me to goals? I don't like habits, right? I don't like goals. And I'm like, goals are just destinations. It's where you want to go.
Yep.
That's it. It's just where you want to go. So you have a focus point that you can get there. And yes, if you do the same thing you do today, there is a definition of that.
Yes.
You expect different results. So it is going to be changing behavior, but it can be easier then, right? Especially that's part of having a coach. They help you get to where you want to go, right? You have coaches that are going to teach you something because you want to improve. And then there's just coaches that are going to help you get you where you want to go and get you there faster.
Right. Yeah. And I think that accountability portion of coaching, right? Like you said, there's coaches that will help you learn, and then there's coaches that will help you be accountable. And I am probably more of the coach that's going to help you be accountable, right? Because I don't want you to rely on me. Like, yeah, I would love to work with anyone forever. That'd be cool. That'd be great. But also, like, there's a certain point where it's like, yeah, I'll hold your hand, but I want you to grow in a way that you're going to outgrow me. And there's going to be a point where maybe I can't help you anymore. And you're ready for the next level, right? Like, I want that. I want to be part of that stepping stone for you to go to the next level, for us to say, like, I'm going to cheer you on, but like, yeah, if there's something above this relationship, like, I want you to get there. Like, I want to give you that boost up to get to that level and just watch you soar. So I think that's so cool. That's so important.
Yeah. And that's part of why it's a 90-day program, right? You then have the option of renewing. And I have clients that renew.
Sure.
Okay. Because honestly, I have a really wide span of how I can help you to get to where you're going.
Yep.
And some clients don't, right? Because then they're going off, and that is fantastic. Right. It's a little sad. It's like when your kid goes away.
Right.
But that's the goal, right?
Yes.
The goal is not that I have the same clients for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
My clients will say, right, as I'm growing every day. Right? And that's part of what they like, because then they get the benefit of how I'm growing every day.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, yes, I don't expect them to.
Yes. All right. Well, this leads great into my next question, which is, what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
There's so many. Um, I had a period of time, and it was kind of in the transition of having my own business and um even at the beginning stages of being a CFO, where I wasn't doing a lot of personal development. And when I started doing the personal development, realizing how much, even if it's reading a book, it doesn't matter what, listen to a podcast, right? Getting information that's outside of your world that you're living in and opening up to new possibilities. You know, I grew up with a very different, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, right? So all of a sudden at 50, realizing that you don't have to do this, you don't have to do this, and you don't have to do this.
Right.
I probably wouldn't have been an accountant if I had, and granted, there is a huge piece. I love cash flow. I love teaching it. I love showing people what they can do with cash flow management and how much they can increase their wealth and improve their life. I would have been probably coaching and doing, more consulting. I probably wouldn't have changed my business and just added to it 10 years ago. But that, always learn, right? Always look to see for a different perspective. It will really open up your world in a way, and know that you truly are limitless. You can do anything. You only are limited by what you think you're limited. And then surround yourself with the people that cheer you on.
Yeah.
Right. Not the naysayers, not the, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. One of the best things about my husband is, he married that chief financial officer. And, having that conversation of, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, there was some economics that definitely changed.
Right.
With that. Right.
Yep.
But he was just like, do what makes you happy. And because I was like, I'm just gonna, that's just not for me anymore.
Right.
So following that, being able to step out, take the chances. Part of what got me to being the CFO was taking the chances, but I could have taken more. I took the chances within a very strict line.
Right.
And just take chances and know that you are good enough. In one of my classes, I do this whole thing that if you think about it, what do you do with a baby? Right? You cheer them on.
Right.
When they walk, spit up.
Right. Oh yeah. Everything. Everything.
Right. And we're all energy.
Yep.
Right. So what is that baby getting before it's getting the words and understanding the words? It's getting the parents' excitement, the energy of, right? And what happens when they get older? When they get older, then it starts getting to, oh, don't do that.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they're not seeing the same energy from their parents, right? We're not giving it the same way. And now we've kind of have them addicted to that energy of, right? So I said to somebody, I'm like, we kind of are creating that whole pleasing.
We definitely are.
Then the not good enough. And we don't even realize we're doing it. And of course, I didn't realize I was doing it to my own daughter. Until I started, coaching and talking and thinking about it and understanding the energy and just being like, oh my God. Right. So how can we balance that out with, the generations to come? To realize that you are perfect. You've always been perfect. Nobody can take that away from you.
Right.
And you're amazing. Right. So.
Yeah. And I feel like, at least as far as kids go, I feel like And maybe I'm speaking of my own children, right? I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So like what you're talking about, yeah, I definitely like, I remember being so excited when my oldest daughter was, like she learned to walk and all that stuff. And then, as she got older, she started to get into things because she's a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to explore, like, right? Like all of a sudden, all we were doing was telling her no. And I'm like, oh man, okay, we got to rein this in. And instead of just saying no without any other context, right? Like, instead of saying, no, let's not touch the hot burner, right? Like,
Right.
we're going to do this instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even right, like now with my son, who's a 1.5 years, watching my daughter and my son play, sometimes all I hear her say is, no, 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 no. And I'm like, oh, stop telling him no, right? So I've had to coach her on, right? Like I'm saying like, okay, yes, you can tell him no, but let's give him some context. Let's help him understand why we had to do this with you. So we still do it with you, right? When mommy says, no, you can't have fruit snacks for dinner. How about we have, right? Like, I don't know, whatever we're having for dinner, and give her choices. So, if when you apply that little kid logic to like adult logic, right? Because it's true. We've kind of been told no, right? We're told yes until about 5. And then it's like, no, you can't do this. But now when you're an adult, you're like, oh, but actually I can do this. Let's wrap things up here. I'm going to ask you the last question of the day, probably my favorite question. If you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
Oh, this is the first thing that came to mind because I've never really thought about it before. For some reason, a spatula.
Yes, I love it.
And why? I would be a spatula because you can always flip things over. You can change your perspective and see it a different way. Nothing is ever permanent.
Yes, I love that so much. Kristen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Let everyone know where they can connect with you. I will include all your links down below in the show notes, but let them know right now how they can connect with you.
So if you can connect with me very easily, if you're on Facebook, just look me up. It's Kristen Alwine. And if not, you can www.alignmentcfo.com. You can find out all about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. It's been so great to talk to you today.
Thank you, Maggie. This has been wonderful and a lot of fun.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.